Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm with Joyce Ng, and we're so excited to be joined by Jake Johnson, the star of HBO Max's Minx. All the episodes are streaming now about a feminist male porn magazine in 1970s California. It's a very funny show. Jake, thanks for doing this. Joyce and I have talked about the show a lot, actually, and one of the things we really love about it is just the economical storytelling and how immediately the show kind of gets you right into the characters and everything. And I feel like that in your opening scene with the show's Joyce, played by Ophelia Lovebond, you have this great dynamic right away with her where she's waiting to go in the conference for magazine publishers or whatever, and you're like, introduce yourself, and it's just so quick. And the way you play Doug is totally perfect, because I think if you played him more as a creep or more of as a lech, it maybe throws the whole balance of the show off. But you kind of immediately establish his energy and vibe and their relationship right away. And I'm sure that was in the writing, but I would love to know, just to start, how you thought you wanted to play him there to make that work, basically.
Well, first of all, it is the writing. The writing is so good. Ellen, this was honestly a script. I was still connected to Stumptown, and it was going away because of the pandemic. And so doing a TV show at that point didn't seem like the move, especially even contractually. And my agent, Jacob Fenton, sent me this script. I believe somebody else had just fallen out as Doug. So there was somebody who was going to be in, who was everyone was excited about. And then there was a hole. And all of a sudden I'm getting a call about this great script. And I wasn't interested in doing TV. And I started reading it. And I had the same thing you were talking about, where right away I thought, oh, this is so clear. This is so well written. And also I liked Joyce. I was like, I know those people. I also liked them. I liked how ambitious she was. I liked how everything was her way and she didn't care. I liked that she was kind of ahead of things and she believed in her ideas and she really wanted to make this business work. And when I saw Doug, my first fear was that he was going to be your typical scuzzy guy who eventually needs to learn a lot. And he wasn't that way. He reminded me of uncles. He kind of reminded me of my dad. He reminded me of these guys who you can easily judge, that I found through my life to be really rich characters who had a lot of depth and were way more gray than black or white. And, I finished the pilot, and there was parts of that pilot that I laughed at. There was parts I got emotional. There was little lines I thought were just perfect. And I really just thought, if Ellen wins creatively throughout the whole 10 episodes, and it doesn't change because of some bad note, and she doesn't lose confidence, I'm this show's going to be great. And so I was really glad, because her writing and Ben Garland coming on, their writing staff is just a killer show.
Mm-hmm. Well, the show also really subverts the stereotype of the pornographer. Like you said, he's not really that stereotypical scuzzball. And I love how in previous interviews you've described Doug as wanting to win capitalism. That's a perfect description of him, because he's really not in porn for the sexual nature of it, it's just a job to him. And he's figured out this is a great way to make money. So when did that click for you, that this was his mindset?
Well, right away. So my mom's dad, he passed away before I was born, but he had all these kind of head shops in Chicago. And when I was in my teenage years, we were on Clark and, near Wrigley Field-ish. And my mom would say your grandfather had a shop here. And I go well, what did he sell? And she would say marijuana, paraphernalia, and women's products. And I'm wait, what? And I'm he was into that? And my mom's response was no, he was into selling things. And so when I first read Doug, my main thing was I didn't want him to be I think I pitched to Ellen to have a line in an episode where it's very that Doug's very bad at sex and not that interested in it. She didn't do it, but my thought of it was I didn't want him to be in porn to see all the naked bodies. I hate that character. I hate the character who is so into sex, and that's why they do these magazines. An influence was really Burt Reynolds and Boogie Nights, where when Burt Reynolds meets Dirk Diggler, he's not thinking wow, I want to see him with his pants off because I'm sexually interested. He just sees a lot of money in that huge penis. And I thought that was so funny. and so smart that I thought like, man, I don't want Doug to be attracted to any of these women. Like as soon as you're in one of Doug's magazines, he no longer has any desire for you. He just sees it as business. And so my whole pitch of Doug, the way I saw him was, he's not a scuzzball, he's not a perv, he's not a creep. He's really a grinder and he's trying to win capitalism, and he doesn't have a lot of education or head start. So he's trying to rub two nickels together to make $1, and that's hard as hell to do.
Just off of that, one last thing about the Joyce and Doug dynamic and the capitalism thing is, I kept watching, like, I feel like a lot of the Joyce and Doug relationship and the way you play him is specifically the Mad Men scene where Don is like, that's what the money is for, to Peggy, right? And like a lot of times, like I feel like you are kind of like extolling this idea of like a cynical realism where she is like obviously like is an idealist perhaps, right? Or like very earnest. And I guess how much did that factor into your relationship, as well with the character and then also like, with Ophelia?
Well, a lot, because I think that Joyce is obviously smarter than Doug. And this is sometimes what I feel generationally, that like she's a younger generation than him. And she is smarter and she understands more, but he's paying for it. And, money's the real thing. And so it's like bullshit walks and money talks. Like, it's like, so I felt like Doug, I always had this advantage because even when they would get in an argument, he can say no. It's like if I'm trying to put a project together and the financier gives me notes on something and I go like, that's a really great note, but I don't think I'm going to take it. Well, all I have to do is say like, I changed my mind. And you go like, well, yeah, then I changed my mind. I'll take the note. I'm so sorry. I got a false sense of confidence, but that's right. You're paying for it. Therefore, it's yours. And so with Doug, my kind of thought was, as long as I keep him not doing bottom dollar productions for perversion or for greed or for anything other, or I mean, greed, I guess is part of it, but for anything other than trying to run a successful business, I felt like he's going to be on the right side of these arguments. And I like playing characters that even if the audience thinks they might be doing something wrong, I can justify why I think they might be doing something right. And so I really leaned into the capitalism of Doug so that I could justify, like the Cavett show when he sells Joyce out. That was a really bad thing that he did. And it was cold and it was selfish and he didn't listen to her and he was wrong. But while I was doing it deep down, I understood why he did it. Billy Brunson is such a great get for the business. And if he could have talked to Joyce before, he of course would have told her. There just simply wasn't the time. And so while I'm doing things that are bad for the character, I see why he does it. And
I love that episode because I mean that was a huge turning point for them, and it was really when his quest for capitalism like bit him in the ass. But you, like you said, like you totally understood why he was doing that, and he's a showman and he's trying to sell the magazine to a national audience. But like he also says, I'm not going to apologize to you or anybody else for playing like a goddamn all-star. Like it doesn't click for him yet that like he's hurt her feelings. So how did you approach that? Because I feel like if you even play him slightly off or wrong, he could come off as a bigger dick than he does. No pun intended.
No, well, that's the next episode. Well, first of all, that episode I thought was directed so perfectly. Rachel Goldenberg, who directed that in our pilot, I'm like, that episode, pound for pound, just in terms of direction, it was one of the best things I've been in. Like, if you really look at what she did and how she shot that and how it was executed, that one really blows me away. But in terms of Doug, in terms of that moment, the ending line, it's funny you bring it up because I've never talked about that part of the press of it. So I always talk about the show because the show I can justify why Doug does it. But that line in there, it doesn't quite go in the narrative of how I like to do it because Doug was wrong. And what Doug did was shitty. The reason I believe he's doubling down and the reason I double down on it is I have, as a person, and I think we all have, been in fights, and in the middle of the fight, you realize you're in a danger zone because you can no longer stand on firm ground, but you can't back off then. And so it's why I wanted to play when she left the room and slammed the door. Doug's face was not angry anymore. As soon as she leaves, Doug knows like I'm wrong. I shouldn't have pushed her. I screwed up, but you put shiny things in front of a raccoon, it's going to go towards them. And that's what the show was. And that's what Billy Brunson was. And then in episode 9 and half of 10, you know, Doug knows he's screwed up. He knows this thing is falling apart, but, you know, he didn't mean for it to screw up. So that ending, that big fight with her really was, he's in over his head right now. And now he's trying to act like he's not, because it's, you know, he's losing somebody who he needs. Because I do believe Doug really needs Joyce in order for it to work. Because if not, he's just going to be selling Milky Moms and Jugs type magazines. And eventually he's going to get shut down by the city, and then he's going to have like another weird business.
True.
Yeah, and like in the finale, like you said, you know, at the final scene, really, like he admits that he was wrong. And after Joyce rejects him, there's this moment when it dawns on his face that he needs to give Minx to her. And he says, I don't want to do this without you, so take it. And he seems to realize that Joyce will go on to do bigger and better things with or without Minx.
Yes, I think that's right.
What do you think is going through his mind? And do you think it was hard for him to let Minx go at that point?
I think what was going through his mind and what I was trying to, so we did that scene 3 different times at 3 different locations. We ended up reshooting that ending many different ways because it was a lot of discussions that we were having with Ellen and with Ben on it, because it was a big moment, because Doug kind of apologizes for everything, but Doug was also right about a lot of stuff. But I think the reason that he gave away the magazine was, or at least what I was trying to think of is, it's like if you really love somebody and you're in a great relationship, but you're like, you have like one like part of the relationships that's really bad, like you're, you know, like 80% is great, but 20% is really gray area. And I think he realizes that she's gonna leave him no matter what. And he can fight her and keep the magazine and do it himself. But he knew the Billy Brunson thing wasn't great. Like you see at the end of 9, when Tina comes in and he's looking at the photos of it, and she's like, is this what you wanted? Like, he knows that when he's in charge, he's tacky and his taste isn't great. And he should be selling Jugs, not Minx. So he could take it, but it would be dead in 3 episodes anyhow. So I think he gives it to her because he has no choice. He does know she is the creative voice of it, and it is hers. He just thinks she could still use him for another, you know, chunk of time. Like, take all my knowledge because I'm older than you and I've done this, and then leave me. You're leaving me too soon. Like, there's still some juice in this fruit. Like, squeeze me more. But so I think Doug finally says, like, you know, she's gonna make it work. I just wish we could have done this a little bit longer together.
I'm glad you mentioned Tina there as well, because I wanted to talk to you about Adara Victor, and your chemistry is, I mean, like, I think as a performer, like in everything, you always generate chemistry really well with another performer, from like Karan Soni and Safety Not Guaranteed to like obviously Zoe and Max and New Girl, Krista Milotti and Mythic Quest, your one episode you did there. I mean, like over and over again. And then like with Adara, it's so apparent that the chemistry is so great. And my entire Twitter feed, I feel like, was memes of you guys like making out. And so it's like clearly struck a chord, I think, with the people who watch the show. Are you able to tell, I mean, it's kind of so basic, but are you able to tell like immediately that you're going to have that kind of chemistry with the performer like Adara? And like, can you talk about how that kind of evolved and how the relationship of Doug and Tina evolved maybe as your relationship as performers evolved?
Well, yeah, it's funny. So that stuff is all predetermined. So like with Zoe, for example, you know, Liz told me in the pilot, she wanted Nick and Jess to be the will they, won't they. With this one, I talked to Ellen and we said, the big discussion was neither of us wanted it to be Doug and Joyce. But, you know, when you're first starting, before you shoot the first scene in the pilot, my thought was, I think HBO Max is going to want this to be the will they, won't they. I think this is a Sam and Diane thing. And I feel like if we shoot the pilot, especially if you go to that ending when they're sitting there at the photo shoot together, I'm like, that's the seed of a relationship. And Ellen was very firm that she really wanted it to be a Doug Tina thing. So as a performer, you put all the extra emphasis on that. You put all the idea that, you know, the mantra you're doing in your own head is, this is who he loves. So when you love somebody, you look at them differently. You treat them differently. If you're going into the fridge to get something, you don't bring everybody a drink. You only have 2 hands. One's for you. So who's the other one for? It's not for like Richie. It's not for Bambi. They can get their own drinks. It's not for Joyce. She's the pain in the ass. It's for Tina. Like, Tina's the one you want to sit by. Tina's the one you care about. So that as soon as the show tells me what it wants to be, I'll put all my emphasis on that. And so for Doug, Ellen was very clear. It is a Doug Tina, and Idara is such a good actor. And she also does something that is really cool that I just don't see a lot. And I really think it needs to be overcredited. But she's really not like a selfish actor. Like, a lot of actors, when the other person on their coverage is doing great, you can feel in their eyes that they're a little jealous. You know, afterwards they'll say like, great stuff. And you're like, thanks, you too. But you feel like, oh, it's really like, we're both gonna do great. Like, but yeah, I had a great monologue and I'm sorry, like I don't want to overshadow whatever. She's one of the few rare people, she's really happy when other people score. Like, if Bambi would do something really funny, I would see her off camera and she would be glowing as much as she's glowing on camera. And so there's part of that you just like, as a human, she's so lovely. And then as an actress, she's, 10 out of 10. So it was very easy to say like, oh, great, this is who I'm paired up with. Like, this is a hell of a scene partner to do this ride with. And so, yeah, I'm really glad it's a Doug Tina thing. I love the dynamic. I have no idea what's next. I think I don't think there's a show without her. So when it's the business school stuff, I'm like, man, I really hope she's not like isolated and like at a desk for an episode where like, oh, I guess she's at University of Chicago and I got to meet like her professor. Like, no, keep her at bottom dollar.
But one of my favorite Doug and Tina moments is, it's a very subtle one, but he orders a daiquiri and Makers. Yeah, and totally. The daiquiri is actually for Doug and the Makers is for her. But I love those little notes here and there about Doug's life, because also his home life, he's very put together. He has a nice house. Yeah. He waters his garden. He has totally. A nameplate on his door with his initials. And totally. His favorite hobby appears to be cooking. He has a pet bird. So what kind of backstory did you build for Doug?
It's really funny. I loved all that stuff too, those little details. But that goes back to like Ellen and the writing staff. Like, stuff's so weird. The backstory I put for Doug was, I didn't over create one. I didn't have like a whole kind of Bible for him of what I thought he was. I knew that he and Tina started up together, and I knew before, and they say it in episode 6, but we had talked about it before the pilot, that the bottom dollar started in his car and in their trunk. And so Idara and I kind of discussed the idea that like they were for sure having an affair. And I know that Doug has 2 exes. I don't know much else about that. I would love to know more about the past of like how they got to this point. But I don't know. The backstory for him that I saw was, my guess was, not the greatest of childhoods, not the greatest of mentors, but a real desire to make some money. And he's an opportunistic person. So anybody he sees who could take him to the next level, he hooks onto. So Tina was his first hook onto. And I think she did the same to him.
This is, I mean, like, we're talking here obviously for like, post series, like Emmy buzz and stuff. I think there is Emmy buzz around your performance. We're obviously talking about it.
We started it. Okay.
We are excited about the idea of this, but I guess like for you
are the Emmy buzz for my performance.
But like, I mean, for you, like, like we talked about, Joyce and I've talked about this, like you're consistently excellent. I think your performance on New Girl was really great as well. Totally different dynamic than what we're talking about here for Minx. But I mean, if you got that kind of recognition for this performance, like, do you think about that at all? Or I'm sure you care, but like, how does it make you, like, what do you think about that, I guess?
Honestly, I really care about the work and I really value doing good work. It would be really nice to be the person who was nominated and won awards, but if I'm not that person, it's not going to change the way I do the work. We were doing a joke I did an indie during the pandemic for Ride the Eagle, and Trent O'Donnell, who did a bunch of New Girl, who directed and co-wrote it with me, we had a joke for press. We were going to do a trailer because it was Susan Sarandon, J.K. Simmons, Darcy Carden, and myself. So we were going to do like Oscar winner, Emmy nominated, and 2012 Kids' Choice nominee, Jake Johnson.
That blimp is very valuable. So.
And so, honestly, I appreciate you guys creating a little bit of buzz. I think it's really fun. It would be a real honor, but it will not be something I lose a lot of sleep over. But if there's the moment where the shine comes on me, I'll be in the tuxedo and be excited to be there. But really, for me, all that stuff is what it leads to more work. And I'm entering a phase where I'm getting better and better projects. And when I get good stuff, it's like such a relief to not see a script and the meeting with the director and writer as they go like, oh, it needs work, man. I know it does. I don't want to do this. And they're like, we'll find it on set. And I'm like, could you have found it already?
Before you sent it to me?
Yeah, like, this one's not ready. And they're like, I know, that's why we're coming to you. I'm like, gotcha. But
well, lastly, hopefully the show will be renewed for season 2, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But my friend and I were talking about how Chris Pine should be on season 2 because he's serving a very 70s look these days with the beard and the hair. And she tweeted it, and Ellen replied to her saying that she will do her best to get Chris Pine on. So would you be up for that Spider-Verse reunion? Like, you guys can be rival publishers or something. We could work this out.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. So absolutely. I would love to know more Doug backstory. Mm-hmm. So perhaps, he's a rival, perhaps he's a friend. Look, if Chris Pine wants to do it, I think any production moves. He's one of those guys. I believe he's in all the Marvel movies or whatever. I know he's in all those. So if one of those actors decides he wants to do a streaming show, they'll move mountains to get him. But if Chris Pine says, like, I want to be in Minx season 2, I got a feeling we'll get picked up for season 2.
We're going to put that out there right now.
Yeah. He said he's in. So
Chris Pine
confirmed for season 2.
This was so great. We do have to wrap up. Jake Johnson, star of Minx. All the episodes are streaming now on HBO Max. We highly recommend watching them because they're a lot of fun. And another thing Joyce and I appreciate about the show, they're like 30-minute episodes. So you can watch them all very quickly.
You move through so quickly, so much plot all the time.
Yeah, it's really great. Jake, thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
Really?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.